Welcome to Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. It's getting close to the end of July and we're approaching a time when the bucks are going to be super visible. I don't know of any other time of the year when they're more visible than they are the first week of August. You're going to see bucks coming out into the open fields during daylight that you may never see again until probably this same time again next year. And I know when I first fell into following this pattern, I was super excited about what I was seeing. I thought, wow, look at these giant bucks that I'm going to be hunting this year. This is going to be my season. I'm going to be putting my tag on at least one of these whoppers. And that would have been the late 2000s when I started really paying attention to the summer patterns of these deer and filming it and getting excited about it. And the fall would come and I'd hunt those spots and I'd never see those deer. I'd run trail camera there, no sightings, no sign of those bucks. And I did that, I think, for at least 3 years, maybe 4, before I finally came to the conclusion that they just weren't there. At first I thought I just wasn't doing a good enough job of finding them, that they were, one step ahead of me. And then finally I realized that the reason I wasn't finding them is because they weren't there. Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail App, Whitetail Institute, Research Equals Results, B3 Releases, XO Broadheads, Exact Sights, and Hoyt. So there's a shift, and then I started doing a little bit more research on it, and I found that there's quite a bit of information out there that biologists have compiled, talking about this summer to fall range shift. So as the testosterone levels rise in these bucks, they break up their bachelor groups and they shed their velvet and then they disperse. And that all happens right about the same time, which is sometime around the end of August, first part of September. When you start seeing bucks shedding their velvet, you got to figure that they're starting to break up their bachelor groups now too, which means that's signaling that transition from their summer ranges to their fall ranges. And a certain percentage of the bucks that you were seeing in a certain area during the summer aren't going to be there. And I'd say the bulk of them, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but if I had to guess, I'd say 2/3 of the bucks in a bachelor group that you're watching, or even small groups of bucks, are going to be someplace else in the fall. How far they go obviously is a variable. They don't all move a certain distance away. Some of them don't move at all. I'm sure some of them move a long ways. Back in the early 2010s to the middle 2010s, Greg Clements worked for me. He's with the hunting public now. And Greg had gotten a master's degree in whitetail deer behavior at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And part of his master's work was on this fall range shift. And he learned that in that area, the average distance that the bucks moved was, I think he said 600 yards. So just say between a quarter and a half a mile. So that was the average. So that means some bucks didn't move at all and others moved, considerably farther. I remember one example from the early to mid 2010s. Chad Lathrop shot a giant non-typical, and he was on the pro staff back then, and so we had video footage of it. Huge deer. So interestingly, some of Chad's good friends were tracking that deer all summer in an area that was a long ways away from the place where Chad killed him. It was about 5 or 6 miles away. And that deer was super visible all summer long, and it's hard not to pay attention to a buck that big, especially in velvet. He had to have looked like a, some kind of world record. So they were out there all the time watching him, and then all of a sudden he disappeared. But then he reappeared on Chad's trail cameras 5 or 6 miles away a week to 10 days later, and he was super visible all fall, and Chad ended up killing him, like I said. So that's just one example of a buck that made, a big 5 to 6 mile summer range to fall range jump. I don't know what the reason is of how they pick one range versus another for the summer or the fall. Maybe there are some experts out there that know that. It might have something to do with where they were born, or who knows what the real reason is. It's just important to know that this transition or this shift takes place. And we're going to see some really nice bucks here in the next couple of weeks, coming out to beans and alfalfa, and on the edges of cornfields, sneaking in and out of the standing corn. You just have to be careful that you don't assume that those deer are going to be there in that same area this fall. It's fun. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be out there looking and filming and talking about some of these deer too. But I know now, having learned that lesson the hard way, that there a certain percentage of them aren't going to be there in the fall. So like I said, my effort is really all about getting the cameras out sometime around the 5th of September, and then running cameras clear until about the 20th of October. And I can figure out at that point the bucks have started filtering into their fall ranges. They're starting to settle into those spots. So I will know then more or less what bucks are going to be there for the fall. Prior to that, you're kind of just looking and hoping. Another way you can know is the bucks are going to be usually in the same fall range that they were in the year before. So if you were hunting a certain buck last year, there's a pretty good chance that that same deer, if he's still alive, will be in that same fall range again this year. So that's kind of nice to say, well, I learned a bunch about him last year. I don't know where he is. I haven't seen him all summer, but you can assume he's going to be back again, and whatever you learned last year is going to help you to be more successful this year. Well, hopefully that clears up a little bit of the mystery. It's exciting. It's fun to see the deer in velvet and to see what's around, but you just have to take it with a grain of salt. Not all of them are going to be there when it comes time to hunt. Well, I appreciate you joining me. I'll see you right back here again soon for the next episode of Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. And remember to always dream big.